It's time for the Kim Hammer Show, where you'll learn how your state government affects you, your family, and community. Here's Kim Hammer.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to the Kim Hammer Show on another beautiful Saturday afternoon. Hope that you're out being able to enjoy God's creation and all the beautiful weather that we're having today. And we'll get right into the program. I want to start off by recognizing the sponsors that help make this show possible. Everett Buick GMC down Saline County there at I-30 and Highway Alco Overpass. Great place to go shop for a new or a quality used vehicle, either one. They've got great warranties. The one thing I do like about Everett's is that they've got great service after the product is sold. So I encourage you to go down there, see Dwight and Susie and all their staff. They'll take good care of you. Regarding their service department, they've got an excellent service department. You get there in the morning, they've got the fresh coffee, the cappuccino. I've got the juices, donuts, everything. So if you go there in the morning to get your vehicle serviced, not only will you get your vehicle serviced, but you can get breakfast nearly. So go on down there and see Everett Buick GMC to get your new Buick GMC product or to get a good quality used one that comes with warranty. Then with regards to real estate, always want to thank Baxley, Penfield, Mouty. They're a great realtor here in Central Arkansas. If you have any realtor needs, whether you're looking to buy or sell, they're a great place to call. You can get them to help you either with your residential or commercial, and also they deal with a line of rentals. And so it's a great place to go in Central Arkansas if you're looking either to buy or sell your real estate needs. Down also Edwards Food Stores here in Central Arkansas and over in East Arkansas. I was in there again this morning. Actually, last Thursday, I made a tour of all their stores, and what was impressive is that they are well stocked. And if you're looking for meat and you're having trouble finding it at another chain store, you need to try Edwards because they've got excellent supply of meat, and you will not be disappointed both in the quality and their prices are competitive. They had their shelves were fully stocked this week, and all their employees were working to keep them stocked and keep the stores clean. You can order online; they'll deliver it to you there at the curbside and take out all the worries and all the concerns. So, Edward Food Stores here in Central Arkansas, great place for you to go get your grocery needs. I want to remind you also that tomorrow, the church that I pastor, we've been airing our services at noon here on 101.1 FM and also on Facebook Live, either on my personal one, The Kim Hammer Show, or SalineNBC.org. You can pick it up on any one of those three venues right there, and the service will be broadcasted live tomorrow here from noon to 1. One other thing I want to make you aware of, if you are a follower on my Facebook page or you want to go to the Facebook page, I'm doing a morning devotion. Usually get it posted by 7:30. They're anywhere between 5 and 8 minutes long, just to kind of get your day motivated, get it going in the right direction. So I encourage you just to tune in. And that's every morning of the week. That's been going on for the last 40 days. It'll continue to go on. So if you want a good morning boost to go with your coffee, you can tune in and watch those devotions. Today on the show, I've got two special guests. One is Elizabeth Smith, and then later on, we're going to be joined by Mike Preston. Elizabeth is the Cabinet Secretary of the Office of Medicaid Inspector General, but she is also the Chairwoman of the Arkansas CARES Act Steering Committee. And so, Elizabeth, thank you for taking time to be on the Kim Hammer Show today.
Good morning. You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
And always want to say thank you to the state agency personnel that come on Saturdays. I know it takes away from your family time, so please express our appreciation to your family for letting you share a little time with us today.
I will. Thank you so much.
All right. With regards, let's start off discussing Office of Medicaid Inspector General, which some people may not even know that office exists, but it's an important office because of what you do. So why don't you start off just by telling us as far as how the Office of Medicaid Inspector General got started and a little bit about what it is that you do, just to give an overview.
Okay, certainly, Senator Hammer. I appreciate that. Yes, the Office of the Medicaid Inspector General is located within the Department of Inspector General, which the Department of Inspector General was created this summer, July 1st, under the transformation that Governor Hutchinson put through for state agencies, where he originally had 40 state agencies, and now we have 15 departments. And so I do serve as the Cabinet Secretary for Governor Hutchinson and the Secretary of the Department of Inspector General. Within the Inspector General, we have also the Office of Internal Audit from Department of Finance and Administration and the Fair Housing Commission. and then the Office of the Medicaid Inspector General, which, to answer your question, Senator Hammer, it was created in 2013 under the Affordable Care Act when the federal government allowed the states to expand Medicaid, and Arkansas chose to expand Medicaid. The purpose and the function of the Medicaid Inspector General's office is Medicaid program integrity, which has always been required by the federal government when they began giving funds to the state to administer the Medicaid program. So every state has a program integrity office, program integrity function. And in 2013, the legislature decided to remove that from within the state Medicaid agency under the Department of Human Services and separated it to create the Office of the Medicaid Inspector General. I was appointed as the Medicaid Inspector General in June of 2015 by Governor Hutchinson after I had served as his chief counsel for the first 6 months of his term.
And it did used to be within DHS, and that was one of the important distinctions I want to make was that prior to the Affordable Care Act and what became the private option here in Arkansas, the auditing features were tucked away within DHS. But when that started, when we implemented the private option, that's when the Office of Medicaid Inspector General came into place. There are still some auditing features that are left at DHS, but with regards to what you do, are you specifically limited to just the private option, or what areas are you allowed to go investigate and to perform audits on?
Yes, we are not limited to just the private option. In fact, our purpose and function is to oversee all of the Medicaid program and all of the spending related to Medicaid. So we look at the providers, the medical doctors, the therapists, the dentists, anyone who receives Medicaid funds to provide care to our Medicaid beneficiaries. And so we look to them to make sure that they're requesting reimbursement properly and that they are getting paid for the work that they're doing properly. And if there are any funds being spent improperly, then we will recover those. We also perform audits and reviews of the managed care organizations, dental managed care, and the behavioral health passes. We do review the mechanism by which the pass provides the money to the providers, and then we also have the ability to review the provider's billing within. We do also look at the Department of Human Services. We check their contracts. We review what they are doing in relation to Medicaid. We review the policies. Obviously, when we're conducting audits, we make sure that those policies are well understood by the providers. And if the policy is too relaxed, then we will work to change those policies or increase the understanding by making a recommendation for an edit to the policy. We also do beneficiary or Medicaid beneficiary reviews and investigations if there is a fraud or improper activity by a Medicaid beneficiary, if they might have become a Medicaid beneficiary by lying on their forms. Typically, if we get a complaint about that or if we suspect that, we will turn that over to DHS for them to conduct the investigation. Typically, what happens is they will then be removed from the eligibility after a determination is made that they're actually not eligible. If the Medicaid beneficiary is working in conjunction with a provider to commit fraud, then we will investigate that and refer that to the Medicaid fraud unit at the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office does prosecute Medicaid fraud, so any provider that we determine is committing Medicaid fraud, we will refer them for prosecution there. Does that fully answer your question?
It does. And let's just kind of segue into the next one. When you are out doing an investigation or you're doing an audit, what exactly, other than what you just mentioned, but take it a little deeper as far as what you're looking for? Are you going in to look at the books? Are you going in to visit with the people that maybe have called in a complaint, or maybe you've gotten wind of that something is inappropriate is going on? But just kind of walk through the actual investigation and the auditing processes from when you get the initial complaint and how you get it until you actually turn it over to either the Attorney General or the DHS.
Yes. So we might receive a complaint from a beneficiary. For example, any of you on the line that are listening in, you likely will receive an explanation of benefits from your insurance carrier or from the Medicaid office if you're a Medicaid beneficiary. And that explanation of benefits will list the medical services that you've received and how those have been paid for, how those have been billed, and who the providers are that took care of you. Sometimes if you've had some tests run, you may not recognize the names on all, the laboratory pathology person you may have never had contact with, so you may not recognize that name, and that may be understandable. But if you receive a bill for an office visit that you did not have, or you receive an explanation of benefits that lists an office visit or a medical supply that you didn't receive, or you didn't see that medical provider, and you know for sure of that, you would need to call in a complaint to your insurance office or to the Medicaid Inspector General's office and let us know. And that would be that the provider has billed for a service that wasn't rendered. They didn't perform that service, but they billed for it. So they may call our office and make a complaint or submit a request online about the complaint. We will then go into our data system where we will look at the billing for that medical provider. And oftentimes we will see that, wow, this medical provider is billing way more hours and way more days than any other medical provider that is similar situated with that provider. So then we will go out and conduct an audit. And when we do that, we will go to the provider's office. Obviously, we're not going to providers' offices right now under the COVID restrictions, but we could send out a letter and request records and ask the provider to send records in. And so we would look at the medical records. We also will sometimes request employment records to see who the other employees are in the offices. And we can look at calendaring and that type of thing. So if we see that a medical provider has billed on a day that the entire state was shut down for an ice storm, but yet this medical provider was continuing to bill from his office, we might be a little curious about that. So we will look at the medical records and see if, in fact, they appear to be legitimate. If they have no medical records for that particular day or a number of days, then that would be indicative of fraud where they've billed, but they don't have anything to support that billing. So that would be a time where we would have a credible allegation of fraud. We would suspend that provider from receiving any payment from Medicaid, and we would refer that to the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit at the Attorney General's office for prosecution.
I got a text message from a listener regarding facility fees at hospitals. They had gone to the hospital and gotten their bill and had a facility fee on that. Is that something that you investigate, or is that allowable under normal course of business?
Yes, typically when someone goes to the hospital, there will be a fee related to the hospital as well as a fee related to the provider who performs the care. And we will look at that under Medicaid circumstances. And this person may be reviewing their insurance. They may have insurance, and that may be an issue for them as well.
Okay. And as far as your selection process of going out to audit either, providers, insurance companies, how do you randomly pick people just to audit, or is it all driven by consumer complaints or, people that just call in with maybe concerns about their billing?
The most of the audits and reviews that we perform actually come from our reviews of the Medicaid billing. We have a robust data analytics system, and we have a good data analytics department where we review all of the billing that comes in. And as I explained earlier, even if we get a complaint, we will look to the billing and see if that billing represents what we're being told in the complaint. And sometimes it actually does. Sometimes it's very interesting when we receive a complaint and then we go in and we look at the billing and we see, wow, that actually makes what this person is telling us actually makes sense. As to what we see in the billing, we do think there might be a problem. But what we do is the way that our analytics system is, we can use algorithms that will pull more than one piece of information together to give us information so that we can say there might be a problem. For example, something that might be easy for you guys to understand, if you have a bill for an ambulance ride, but then no associated medical visit within a short period of time, that might be cause for concern, because typically an ambulance would pick up someone to take them to a medical facility. And so we'll look at that. That doesn't necessarily mean fraud, but it might mean there might be a problem with the billing. So we might review that. And we also look, as I said earlier, at comparisons. We may look at a certain type of medical provider and determine which one bills higher than the others, and we'll make decisions about that as to what we think might be going on.
All right. So to date, do you have an idea of the number of dollars that you have recouped, or the number of cases that you've turned over that have actually resulted in prosecutions? Or I'm asking you something. Do you have it off the top of your head by any chance?
Off the top of my head, no. At the top, I'm sorry. I should have looked at that. I've been thinking so much about the COVID issues. I can't rattle that off.
Well, that's fine. I know that you've recovered a significant amount based on, committees meetings in the past, which is, it's unfortunate, because that means you got people out there that are, not operating properly within the system. But yet on the other side, it is good, because it reflects that, there's an effort being put out to be able to detect or to find people that are committing fraud against the Medicaid system, because every time there's a case of fraud against the Medicaid system, that's good money that could have been used for somebody else. As far as recouping, let me ask you, how do you go about recouping when you do identify a provider, insurance company that has conducted themselves improperly? The recouping of the money, how does that work? Does it go over to the office, or over to the Attorney General, and then it goes through litigation? And what kind of success do we have as far as recovering?
Sure. Well, we have a few different ways that we recover the dollars. If it's an audit that we conduct and we determine that our findings show that there was improper dollars that were paid out to the provider, then we will submit an audit finding request to them, requesting that they pay those dollars back. They have the opportunity for an appeal, and then we can go back and forth with them on the appeal. And then we very well may recover those dollars after, the appeal is over. We're pretty successful in that. We like to make sure before we go forward that we do have the ability to recover. It would be a waste of our time to go forward if we didn't feel strongly that we would be able to recover. The cases that go to the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit for the AG's office, they do recover as well. Oftentimes they will have a penalty and they'll recover the improperly spent funds. So it does take a little while for that to happen through their criminal process. We have another process that we have found that after I started in the role as the Medicaid Inspector General, we realized that a lot of times the appeal process and the audit process takes a long time, but we may be able to identify issues and send a letter to the provider and let them know that we can tell through our data analytics, and we can tell from their billing that they've been improperly, it may not be fraud, it may be a misunderstanding, or they are utilizing a code incorrectly. And so we will send out letters. We call them provider awareness letters, PAL, if you will, PAL, and let the provider know that we're going to be their pal in this, and we're not going to audit them, but we are asking the provider to review their billing and review their records to see if, in fact, they have improperly billed under this particular circumstance, and we will ask them to pay back those dollars. And oftentimes we do receive positive response from that, and they do pay those dollars back either in check, or we will recover from future payments. We send our requests to DHS, and they will recoup from future payments.
Okay.
And that's oftentimes how we do it.
One last question on this, and we're going to transition, get into the other subject I asked you to come on the show to talk about. As far as the relaxing of the rules during this COVID-19, I know there have been a lot of rules that have been relaxed, a lot of leniency, a lot more telemedicine that's going on now. How difficult is that going to make your life moving forward? And are we just going to kind of hit the pause button here for about 60 days to where, as far as taking a look at auditing providers and such, because it is a new set of rules, at least for this brief moment of time, how do you anticipate moving forward, being able to look back during this time and see who did what right and who did what wrong?
Yes, you have hit the nail on the head. We have been looking at that very intently recently. Medicare has relaxed their auditing processes greatly, and so we've had a lot of pushback from providers when we're continuing with audits and continuing with reviews. Provider associations are asking us to completely stand down. We have not stopped our audit processes because we obviously, if the police say we're not going to be out doing any speed traps for the next 20 days, that might cause people to speed. So we want to make sure that we continue our reviews, and we are working very closely with the providers. However, if they tell us that they're not in the office and they're unable to respond to our records request immediately, we are giving additional time, and we are working with providers to make it a little bit more easy on them for their responses. But yes, the rules have been relaxed a number of ways because we do want to make sure that patients are able to continue to receive care, even though they may not be in a face-to-face environment. So telemedicine has been expanded. All of the changes related to the COVID-19, related to the Medicaid guidelines, those are on our website at omig.arkansas.gov. Also on the Department of Human Services website, they have those changes as well. So if you're a provider or a recipient, you can specifically go to a button and see how that might be affecting you, because we do want you to be able to continue to get your treatment. But we have been discussing with other states and among our office and other law enforcement entities about how we will address the things that have changed. Because we are concerned about increases in fraud. And one thing, Senator Hammer, I want to make sure of that the citizens of Arkansas do understand, there are people out there trying to obtain Medicaid ID numbers and Medicare ID numbers. And if it falls into the wrong hands, a provider might just simply begin to bill improperly for any number of things. A lot of times what we see is for durable medical equipment or for pharmaceuticals, none of the things that are actually provided to anyone, but they just would rack up bills and receive payment for that. And so that's something that we're seeing across the nation. So it's pretty dangerous. So please keep those numbers safe and secure.
Very good. I've got somebody sitting here in studio, that can help get the information up on my website, which is the KimHammerShow.com. You can go up to that website. I'll get Ben, who actually works in the Office of Medicaid Inspector General. I'll get him to get that put up on my website if y'all want to go to the website and get the information. But go ahead and give it to us as far as how can someone contact you if they have a concern or they see something that they just want to make sure that all things are right.
Great. Okay, so it's the Medicaid Inspector General's website, which is omig.arkansas.gov. And you can also send a complaint. You can call in a complaint to our hotline, which is 1-855-5-8-R-OMIG. And the numbers that go with that are 1-855-527-6644. And if you're lucky, you'll actually get to speak with Ben.
Very good.
He does help us with our complaints. Thank you.
All right. So we'll get that up on my website, thekimhammershow.com. You can go up there and access that information. But if you do have a concern, it's better to call and have peace of mind than it is just to go on and not know for sure. So you can call 855-527-6644. That's 855, the number 5, and then AROMIG. All right, we only got a couple of minutes before we get in the bottom of the hour, but you have also recently been appointed as chairwoman of the Arkansas CARES Act Steering Committee. Quick history as far as the CARES Act. This is part of what the congressional delegation worked out to pass money, and I think they're working on the fourth phase of it now, if I've got my memory correct, where money is being passed down to the state. And as the chairwoman, just in about a minute, just kind of tell us a little bit about the steering committee, what its goals and objectives are, and then we'll come back after the break at the bottom of the hour to get into the discussion.
Certainly. Thank you. Yes, the state of Arkansas has received $1.25 billion to administer through the CARES Act, and it is for dollars that are specifically related to CARES Act needs. So we are looking at that. The money has to be spent between March and December of 2020. It has to be unbudgeted funds and has to go specifically to address the COVID-19.
Of which none of that money can be used to plug the budget shortfalls as far as within the agencies, correct?
That's correct.
Right. And what I want people to kind of get in their mind before we go to the break is back during the special session that we actually had surplus funds as a state somewhere north of $175 billion. During that special session, we went in, gave the governor the authority to be able to use that money for immediate purchases of protective devices and other things. I think there were respirators that were bought in that. I'd have to pull it up, see exactly. But that money was made immediately accessible so that it could bridge the gap until the money from the CARES Act actually made it down to the state. Now there's a steering committee that was actually created by the governor on March 30th under a proclamation. There are 16 members of it, I think, looking here quicker, 15, yeah. 16. Majority of them are all going to be secretaries of the major departments. And then there were 6 members of the legislative branch, 3 senators, 3 representatives that are going through the filtering. So when we come back, let's talk about the meetings that you've had and just kind of just kind of look through where we've gone, where we've come so far, where we are and what we anticipate moving forward. Before we go to our break, I want to thank my sponsors that are making the show possible. Everett Buick GMC down in Saline County there at I-30 and Elko Overpass. Easy to find right there off the interstate. You can get a great deal on a Buick GMC, either new or you can get a certified used one that comes with warranty. You can talk to all of them about the details on that. They only carry great quality cars, both new and used, and then they've got a great service department that they'll take care of you after they sell you the car. Then you got Baxley Penfield Mounty for realtor needs here in Central Arkansas. They'll take care of you with regards to your residential or commercial needs. They can help you either in selling or in buying. And also, if you're looking for rental property, they've got a rental division that you can call to find out about residential or commercial. Edwards Food Stores here in Central Arkansas, over in East Arkansas. Great food chain. They are just very attentive to details. Their stores are well stocked. Their prices are very competitive. And if you're looking for great quality meat, they have meat. I was in there this morning, and no joke, at the one in Bryant, people were lined up for them to bring out the T-bones. And I believe that guy brought out probably 30, 35 T-bones. And even after the people that were in line, they still had them. And they were great quality looking meat. So if you're looking for good meat products, you need to check out Edward Food Stores here in Central Arkansas. And then if you want to stay in tune, as far as information that we're putting out, go up to thekimhammershow.com on my website that's been launched. And also you can follow me on Twitter if you want to. Now, I don't do Donald Trump Twittering, okay? That's not my style, but if it's something important I think you want to know or something that you may want to know that would draw your attention to the website, you can follow me on Twitter, and we will send out those important information, such as about the show content that we're doing each and every show. We're going to come back, be joined by Elizabeth Smith, who is the cabinet secretary for the Office of Medicaid Inspector General, but she's also the chairwoman of the Arkansas CARES Act Steering Committee. And then about 12:45, we're going to be joined by Mike Preston, who is the Secretary of Commerce. And what we're going to talk with Mike about is now that we're getting the state back to work or moving in that direction, and you're sitting at home drawing those unemployment checks, and you get the call to go back to work and you don't, what happens to you? You might want to tune in, especially if you're an employer and listen to this, or you're an employee. You better be sure to be listening so you can get the facts accurate from Mike Preston when we come back after the break. This is the Kim Hammer Show.
This week in the Town Hall Review with Hugh Hewitt, sponsored by the Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy and ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom. As the nation enters its 7th week of shutdown, the money fight is raging on Capitol Hill.
We just want to make sure that tax dollars are supporting a response to the virus.
Join us for our program. Sign up for our podcast at townhallreview.com.
Town Hall Review with Hugh Hewitt, Saturdays at 7 a.m. on 101.1 FM. The Answer.
Salem Media Little Rock just keeps getting better. If you're looking for some soul-lifting inspiration, check out 103.3 and 105.5 Rejoice, Little Rock's gospel experience. If Bible teaching is what you want, we've got you covered at Faith Talk 99.5. 93.3 The Fish is your home for real life, real hope. And our 101.1 The Answer is now the home of Rush Limbaugh. We're Salem Media Little Rock, the best in radio.
Hey, it's Dave Ellswick. You know, cost is the biggest reason most of you don't check into private and Christian schools for your kids. And we want to change that. We've got partnerships with schools all over the area that's offering half price, that's right, half price, 50% off their tuition. See the complete list of schools at dealsforlittlerock.com. For more information, call Lynn at 501-404-6545.
Jay Sekulow and crew talk election 2020.
Joe Biden even saying, hey, maybe we should suspend. And without him on the campaign trail, there's this move by him to say, well, maybe we should push back. But President Trump has said absolutely not. Congress mandates the date. They're given that power in the Constitution. But the Constitution goes further in the 20th Amendment because it says when the new president and vice president have to be sworn in.
Jay Sekulow live. Afternoons at 5 on 101.1 FM. The Answer.
A stock market that's breaking record after record, potential rising interest rates, and how can any of us forget the $20 trillion in national debt? Hey, it's David Lucas. What does all this mean to you and your investments, and how do you protect everything you've worked so hard for, while at the same time making the most out of every nickel you've saved for retirement? I'll reveal the answer to these questions and much more on The David Lucas Show this Saturday at 10 a.m.
on 101.1 FM, The Answer.
We always hear that elections have consequences. When Democrats took over the House, it led to the impeachment of an elected president. This radio station wants every listener to focus on what's important. How do we save America from the forces that want to tear it apart? How do we make sure we save America for our kids and our grandkids? The hosts on this station need you to engage in the fight. We need you to register to vote. Elections have consequences. Make sure you are part of the solution. 101.1 FM, The Answer.
Welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show. I want to thank my sponsors, Everett Buick GMC down in Saline County, also Baxley, Penfield, Mouty, and Edwards Food Store. Remind you also tomorrow at noon, the church that I pastor will be having our services here on 101.1 FM tomorrow at noon. So invite you to join me there. Then also, if you'd like a morning devotion, you can follow me on my Facebook page and get a morning devotion. Usually runs between 5 and 8 minutes long, and I usually get it up by 7:30 in the morning. And for any of the content on the show that we're discussing today, you can go up to the KimHammerShow.com on the website, and you can get all the information that we're sharing. We've got Elizabeth Smith, Cabinet Secretary, Office Medicaid Inspector General, and also Chairwoman of the Arkansas CARES Act Steering Committee. So the money's coming down from the federal government, and there's a subcommittee that was established by a governor's proclamation on March 30th, made up of cabinet secretaries and 6 members of the legislative branch, 3 representatives and 3 senators. So to date, Elizabeth, how many meetings has the steering committee had?
We've had 3 meetings.
Okay. And with regards to, and I'm going to kind of go down following the proclamation. It has some bullet points in it, and we'll work on getting that proclamation up on my website if you want to find it. But as far as the amount that's specifically coming to Arkansas, it's $1.2 billion that is being made available to us. Is that all coming down in a lump sum, or how is it that it's going to get from the federal government down to the state?
We have actually received it. $625 million came down, I want to say the April 15th, the afternoon of April 15th. And then the rest of it came shortly after that. And so it is in an account at DFNA.
Okay. And as far as the restrictions that came down with the money from the federal government, it's not like they said, here's $1.2 billion, go forth and spend. What are some of the guidelines, or just, talk at the 100,000 foot level? What are some of the guidelines that came down with the money as far as how it can be spent?
Certainly. The main issue is it has to be spent for COVID-related needs, and it has to be unbudgeted dollars. The dollars have to be spent within between March and December 30th of 2020. So that was the initial requirement. It has to be necessary expenditures incurred for the public health emergency related to coronavirus disease 2019. They could not have been accounted for in the most recent budget cycle. So we did receive some guidance from the U.S. Department of Treasury on April the 22nd, and that has helped a little bit, but they've really given the state the ability to make the determinations as necessary.
Now, no expectations that we're going to have to pay the money back to the federal government, but are there going to be auditing procedures to make sure that the money was actually spent the way it was supposed to be spent? Because I know I understand it was the federal government's reaction to the COVID crisis that has shut down the businesses, and in an effort to try to help sustain business and keep the economy engine going, they have thrown a whole lot of money at this thing. But will there be a day of reckoning, as far as the federal government coming back and saying, okay, we gave you the money, and shows how you spent it, and in the event we should not spend it the way it came down, even with guidelines that are loose, are we subject to having to pay any of that money back, and will there be auditing procedures with it?
Well, of course, the state is reviewing the expenditures prior to making the determination as to whether or not these will be legitimate expenses. One of the issues would be if another source of funding is available, or another source of funding actually covered that same cost, another federal source of funding, then we would not be able to provide the funding out of this source. So we would want to make sure to have those funds repaid and returned into this fund. Yes, if we don't spend the money, we would have to return it to the federal government. I don't think that will be a problem. I think we have plenty of expenses here for the state that will be necessary. But if we determine that money was paid out and it shouldn't have been, then yes, we will be recovering that. So
there are a lot of hands out for the money, and we want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt that there's some legitimate needs, because I know the restaurants, have been struggling, other small businesses have been struggling, and the reality is that some businesses have been thriving through this, with regards to being able to meet needs. I know I've been in several of the hardware stores, lumber yards. They just seem to be knocking it out of the park. Of course, grocery stores are seeing an increase in business. So are there guidelines that are in place as to how much money goes to one specific area over the other, or what are the guidelines that are helping guide the discussion as to where the money ought to go and how much of it ought to go to those areas?
Right. So the guidelines that we received from the federal government, they have 5 different examples of areas in which we can utilize the funding. Medical expenses, such as COVID-related expenses for public hospitals, clinics, and similar facilities, establishing temporary medical facilities and other measures to increase treatment capacity, testing related to COVID-19, emergency medical response equipment, emergency transportation, those types of things, expenses for operating public telemedicine capabilities, also additional public health expenses for communication and enforcement, expenses for acquisition and distribution of supplies, PPE, for medical personnel, social workers, police officers, community settings, making sure that direct service providers, child care officers, have the things that they need to be protected. Expenses for disinfection of public areas and other facilities, including nursing homes, expenses for technical assistance to local authorities and other entities to mitigate the cost of the COVID-related threats to public health and safety, expenses for other safety measures, and for quarantining as well. We also have a recommendation that we can review it for payroll expenses for public safety, public health care, human services, and similar employees, and actions to facilitate compliance related to public health measures, food delivery, distance learning, telework capabilities, sick pay, maintaining the state prisons and jails, expenses for care for the homeless populations. Also, as related to one of the issues you brought up just before when you asked the question, was related to provision of economic support in connection with COVID, such as grants to small businesses to reimburse costs of business interruption that's caused by these required closures, expenses related to state, territory, and local governments for payroll support programs, unemployment insurance costs related to this public health emergency, if these costs would not be reimbursed by the federal government pursuant to another portion of the CARE Act or otherwise. And that's where we look to issues if there is another federal government source of payment or another place in the CARES Act. The CARES Act is not only paying out this $1.25 billion to the state, but there's lots of other pieces of the CARES Act that funding is going to states as well as Arkansas. And then also the last one was a recommendation for reasonably necessary to keep the function of government going. So go ahead.
I was going to say, based on the numbers that I'm looking at, and correct me if I'm looking at the wrong number, but there's been about $160 million of that has been earmarked. That doesn't necessarily mean it's been all the way through the approval process, which, just correct me if I'm wrong, as far as the approval process, there are recommendations that come down either from the agencies or from the governor, and I guess could come, from the steering committee. But those recommendations go before the steering committee for consideration. And then there is a requirement of legislative review that could boil down to just the chairs of peer or the chairs of ALC, that with the approval of those four, then the money can be actually cleared out and dispersed for whatever area has been identified and justified by need. Is that accurate in what I just said as far as the process of the money flowing out?
Yes, so the process for the money flowing out is that it is the governor has put together the steering committee to assist him in making determinations about where best to address the needs and how best to spend the money. So the steering committee serves as an investigatory and advisory group for him, and we review these after having had a review through DFNA to make sure that the expense is basically a legitimate expense. There's not something else that would cover it. They do a preliminary review. And then the committee reviews it and makes the determination, and then we make a recommendation to the governor. And then once the governor receives that, if he wants to go forward with that recommendation, then yes, he would send it on to the legislative review.
Okay. I tell you what, I've got Mike Preston coming on. I know that there are some, efforts being put forth as far as getting money down to small businesses and to, those who have been adversely affected. I know some money's already been earmarked for that. The debate of more possibly being earmarked, but that's ongoing. So, any concluding comments you want to make about the steering committee as the chairwoman of it?
Well, the steering committee is working very hard to review, and we really appreciate the work that the committee has put in and the recommendations that we've received from the various agencies.
Okay, very good. That's been Elizabeth Smith, and thank you for being on, and thank your family again for taking time out on a Saturday. She is the Cabinet Secretary, Office of Medicaid Inspector General, and also the Chairwoman of the Arkansas CARES Act Steering Committee. And thank you, Elizabeth, for being on. We're going to bring on Mike Preston now to finish up the hour. Mike is the Secretary of Commerce. He has got a big load because he deals with the unemployment issue as well as some other areas. But with the time that we've got left, Mike, welcome to the Kim Hammer Show this afternoon.
Hey, thank you, Senator. It's always good to talk to you.
Thank you. You too. Let's kind of get right down to it. I got a call this morning from a constituent who owns a business, and He said, I'm ready to, engage my people. We're ready to get the doors back open with the, business environment loosening up a little bit. Some of us would like it move faster, but that's for another discussion. But the reality is businesses are now starting to be given the latitude to kind of open up and start opening the doors. The problem was when he called some of his employees to tell them to come back to work, they said, you know what, we're making more staying at home than we are coming to work. Give us a good education and some factual information now that we're in this phase of opening Arkansas back up for business as far as what the employers and what the employees should expect whenever it is that the call to come back to work takes place.
Sure. No, thank you, Senator, for that question. And, I'd say on the positive side is that it's exciting to see businesses ready to go back to work. They're looking to reopen. They're looking to do so in a safe, secure manner, bringing their employees back and making sure their customers are going to be safe as well. So we are starting to hear that in terms of the employees who are saying, I'm doing better on the additional unemployment from the federal government, the CARES Act, than I was before. Why should I go back to work? And the short answer is if you are offered your job back and you are still claiming unemployment and you refuse to go back, and then that next week when you have to go back and check you're still claiming unemployment, that would be considered a fraudulent claim, and we will investigate, and it will be noted as such, and we will take necessary measures. So for those employees that are thinking that they can just not go back to work, those funds do run out by July if you're not back to work. So if you get that opportunity to go to work, I would suggest taking that opportunity, because otherwise the businesses will notify our Department of Workforce Services and we'll investigate each of these and make sure that it's noted as a fraudulent claim against the UI system.
And the thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I ran into this week with somebody else from a past experience, and is if you draw an unemployment check and then you maybe have a month's worth of employment, and you are investigated as having drawn both off of the unemployment side, but also drawing off of the employee side, that is a fraudulent action, and that will actually get you on a list that when you do need that unemployment next time down the road, you are suspended for, I can't remember what it was. It seemed like 16 weeks, or you're not able to get unemployment down the road. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct. You will end up on our list, and that's what a lot of the cases that we're having to work right now is people are going in and filing UI claims, and it's noted in their history that there's a previous overpayment or a fraudulent claim, and until we get that cleared up, they're not able to be able to get their unemployment benefits. So it is a serious offense, and one that we will look into if that's the case, because we want to get as many people off of unemployment as we can, as quick as we can, so people are getting back to work, the businesses are able to reopen, and we get our economy moving again.
And with regards to, I know there's been some delays, and I know y'all are throwing everything you got at it, including the kitchen sink, as far as getting people's unemployment claims up and going. How many did you pay this week? Do you know right off the top of your head?
I know it was north of 80,000 in the state that we paid this week, and we'll see that number jump significantly probably sometime next week, end of next week, or early part of the following week with the new pandemic unemployment assistance site functional. We're going through the testing phase right now on that, so we're testing some applications that we have on file to make sure that system works properly. And as soon as we have that assurance that it's not going to crash or go down on us, then we will go full tilt on that. And to all those folks who have been out of work on and are looking for the pandemic unemployment assistance, we'll be able to start recouping those benefits.
And if somebody is, like, for example, somebody now is drawing unemployment, or they're waiting for their unemployment to be cleared up, or, for you guys to process the claims, and let's say they get a call to go back to work next week, they get that call to go back to work, they're obligated to go back to work, or they're going to lose their unemployment, but that doesn't prohibit them from getting their back pay because of system complications. So is that correct?
That's right. We're able to back pay. So if you're one of the ones that was caught in limbo, or you were in that pandemic unemployment assistance area, we'll go back and be able to backdate it from the time that you were separated and the verified time that you were out of work and not able to. So even if you are back to work and you're owed for the last 4 weeks, we'll make you whole for those 4 weeks. But if you are given that opportunity to go back to work, then that's your duty, your obligation to. Otherwise, and I guess you technically don't have to, but then you can't legally continue to claim unemployment if you don't go back to work.
Sure. Well, and on that situation I cited a while ago, there were, where there's some other situations involving it which were unattended, nothing deliberate or fraudulent. But the reality is that if you're given the opportunity to go back to work, you need to stop your unemployment or quit trying to draw both. Let me ask you with the few minutes we got left. So regarding those that are self-employed that have been unemployed, there is some hope coming as far as them, because they've been kind of pushed to the bottom of the list. I know y'all have been trying to get everybody else, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things I think people need to know is that you were dealing with a computer system that was like built back in the 70s, and the ability for the old computer system to communicate to basically what you've been building the last 30 days in order to make that happen, it just wasn't there. But the new system is on the horizon. And as far as those people that have been drawing or that have been self-employed but have not been able to get that employment, should we see in the near future that opportunity for them to get their claims processed?
Yeah, that's exactly what we've been working on and trying to build this new system, because it is a new classification of unemployment. It's something that our system was not built to or designed to withstand. No state had. I mean, this is a brand new system in the country. So all states were kind of faced with the same dilemma. Some had newer systems that made it a little bit easier to make it more compatible, but ours was being so antiquated, we had to work a little bit harder to get everything up to where it needs to be. But we have that new system built. As I said, we're going through the testing phase of it right now. Assuming everything goes smoothly with it, then we'll be able to input all those and get that assistance out to those individuals who are the self-employed who certainly need that help, because a lot of them have not been able to have benefits or any kind of income for the last 4, 6 weeks and beyond. But we will, just like the other unemployment, be able to backdate that to when their business was impacted. We're hopeful that all those folks are getting ready or in the process of going back to work, and we'll begin to start be able to claim some kind of income here in the very near future.
All right. So if they are, if they were self-employed, they should get the back pay, and hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, as businesses open back up, that'd be somewhat of a nest egg would come in. Of course, they would kind of give them a boost while they get their business up and going again. All right. With regards to money that's available to businesses, I know that just had Elizabeth Smith on. The steering committee is working on trying to get some more funds coming. Do you anticipate that the businesses would be able to look for that coming in the near future so that it can help with the cost of getting their businesses back up and running?
Absolutely, and that's our intent with this Arkansas Ready for Business grant program. We want to make sure that the businesses that are reopening or having to reconfigure, they have the funds necessary to meet all the health department guidelines, so that they have the PPE to protect their employees and their customers, that they've gone through and done the deep cleaning that they need to reopen. Or in some cases, if it's on the manufacturing side or processing side, they're going to have to reconfigure their lines so that the folks are properly socially distanced. And that there's equipment available so that they can screen their employees as they come in or screen their customers. We want to make sure that through those CARES Funds Act that we have a grant program that we're able to support with that. So the governor announced yesterday an additional $85 million request on top of the 15 that the steering committee had approved earlier in the week. So a total of $100 million was approved and went through the steering committee. And the governor made the recommendation and request of the ALC to approve the appropriation so we can get that done. I know that's being looked at now by the ALC, and as soon as we get that, we'll be ready to go and hopefully get some funds out to these businesses who really.
All right, Mike. Out of time. They're cutting me off. Kim Hammer Show. We'll see you next week.
101.1 FM. The Answer. KDXE FM. Kamak Village, Little Rock. A Salem Media Group station. 101.1 FM. The Answer.